Hey guys, welcome to my Eria and Wynn deck profile. These two are my favorites of the Charmers, and I wanted to try making a deck around them. I did also have the idea to combine Ursa and Hita as well as Lina and Dark. The only problem being the Lina and Dark lines are still incomplete as their familiars have not been made, and I do hope Konami gets onto that in the future. So let's get into the deck. Starting with the monsters, I'm running 3 Eria the Water Charmer and 3 Wynn the Wind Charmer. When they're flipped, the level 3 Charmers can take control of an opponent's monster with their same attribute for as long as they're on the field. The support from the structure deck is meant to help with this, but even with that, their flip effects are practically never going off. They are in here entirely to summon their familiar possessed forms. Next, I'm running 3 Familiar Possessed Eria and 3 Familiar Possessed Wynn. The Familiar Possessed forms can special summon themselves from the hand or deck by sending their appropriate Charmer along with the monster of their attributes to the graveyard, and if they're summoned this way, they gain Piercing. In standard Charmer Familiar Possessed decks, no one really runs the level 3s, meaning the upgraded forms are practically vanillas. But if you decide to focus on 1 or 2 specific Charmers like this, that effect may come into play. Next, I'm running 3 Gigabytes and 3 Ranryu. The level 4 familiars are all fairly similar. You can only ever control one of each, and they can be special summoned from the hand if you control a spellcaster, making them great for extra deck plays. They also have unique effects. When Gigabytes is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon a monster with its attack and defense from your deck. Ranryu is the same, except it summons from the graveyard. They kinda make me think of Graf and Seer from Burning Abyss, where you could technically loop between them. Only it's not as good with these two as they need to be destroyed, while the BA duo only needs to be sent to the graveyard. Next, I'm running 1 each of Awakening of the Possessed Gigabytes and Rasenryu. The level 5 familiars can be special summoned from the hand or deck by sending a face-up spellcaster and a face-up level 4 or lower monster of their attributes to the graveyard. They also have a unique effect and a shared effect. The shared effect is if they're sent from the field to the graveyard in any way, you can search their respective spiritual art traps or a possessed spell or trap. Gigabyte's unique effect lets you send a random card from your opponent's hands to the graveyard, then lets each player draw a card when it's summoned by its effect. Rasenryu's unique effect lets you bounce an opponent's card when it's summoned by its own effect. I have thought before when putting this deck together of running 2 each of the level 5 familiars, but doing that makes the deck more bricky, even though they can be special summoned from the hand. So I'm just running 1 of each, and their effects are pretty good. Gigabyte's hand rip effects would be better if you could actually know what was being sent, especially since that effect is a hard once per turn. But given that the water trap lets you look, they probably didn't want that kind of effect twice. For the 2-ofs, I'm running 2 Edda the Sun Magician. This is very good indirect support for Charmers given that they almost all have 1500 defense, and you can proactively trigger the effects of the level 3s without having to wait. I'm kinda surprised I haven't seen many people run this. It's a pretty good card. The final monsters I'm running are 2 Fairy Tail Luna. This is a staple in most Charmer decks. Every familiar possessed has 1850 attack, and the bounce can be pretty devastating against extra deck cards given how most of the generic ones are almost always run at single copies. If you play any form of Charmer deck, put this in. Moving to the spells, I'm running 3 Spirit Charmers. You discard a card to search 2 different Charmer monsters, familiar possessed monsters, and or possessed spells or traps. Then you add one to hand and set the other. This can get you exactly what you need, and since I'm running the base Charmers, this has more targets. It can't search everything in the archetype, and it's a completely dead top deck if your hand is empty, but it's super important and should always be maxed out on. Next, I'm running 2 Awakening of the Possessed. Since I only have 2 main attributes in the deck, the attack buff won't be super huge, but the protection and free draw are great to have. I don't actually know if having multiple copies out stacks the attack boost since most Charmer builds only run 1. Next, I'm running 2 Grand Spiritual Art Ichiran. This can negate the first monster effect your opponent uses while you control a 1500 defense spellcaster, and you can swap a spellcaster in your hand with a same attribute familiar from your deck. It's unfortunately not a great field spell. The negates can be easily played around, and since you're just swapping a card in your hand for another in your deck, you don't actually plus. They could have done better with this. Next, I'm running 2 Secret Village of the Spellcasters. Provided you can keep a spellcaster on the field, this can almost cripple spell-heavy decks. I haven't seen it run in every form of spellcaster deck, mostly since some of them have their own archetypal field spells. But if you need something a bit better, or if the spellcaster deck you're playing doesn't have its own field spell, this is a high recommendation. The final spell I'm running is one Called by the Grave. This isn't a crazy combo deck, but having something to counter hand traps is pretty important, especially for Spirit Charmers, since having that negated is a major -2. For the traps, I'm running 3 Possessed Partnerships. This can special summon a 1500 defense spellcaster from your hand or graveyard face up or face down, and if you have multiple different attributes after the summon, you can pop a face up card. A shame it can't pop set cards. No idea why they decided to put that limit. You can also banish this card from your graveyards to get one of your possessed continuous spells or traps back onto the field. So if you lose Awakening, or another card we'll get to, this will get it back. Next, I'm running 3 Spiritual Water Art Aoi and 3 Spiritual Wind Arts Miyabi. The Spiritual Art traps require you to tribute a monster of their attributes to do different things. Water Arts lets you look at your opponent's hand and send one of their cards to the graveyard. Wind Arts lets you target an opponent's card and put it on the bottom of the deck. Both of these effects are really good. There aren't too many cards I can think of which aren't banned that let you look at your opponent's hand, and while putting a card back into the opponent's deck isn't the best form of removal, especially since it targets, it can at least temporarily get rid of a problem card. And if it's an extra deck or ritual monster, your opponents will have to summon it again. The final main deck card is Unpossessed. It gives your Charmers battle immunity, it powers up your familiar Possessed when they attack an opponent's monster, and if any of your monsters are destroyed, you can special summon a 1500 defense spellcaster from your deck with a different attributes face up or face down. If this is paired with Awakening, the Charmers will have full destruction immunity, and even on its own, this will buff the familiar Possessed to 2650 attack, which is not a small amount. This is only ever run at 1, but it's a good card to have. Now for the extra deck. For the Xyz, I'm running 1 Black Ray Lancer, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Lightning Chidori, 1 number 32 Shark Drake, and 1 Drill Driver Vesperado. And for the Lynx, I'm running 2 Eria the Water Charmer Gentle, 2 Win the Wind Charmer Verdant, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 SP Little Knight, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Selene Queen of the Master Magicians, and 1 Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax. And that's it for the deck. This was really fun to put together, and I have a real soft spot for the Charmers. They will never be competitive, but it's still a fun archetype to play around with, and at least with the Elemental Charmers, you could use whatever combinations you wanted. I really hope they complete Linus and Darks lines sometime in the future. As always, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on X, consider backing me on Patreon, and remember to stay chilled.